According to several polls, support for gun control in this country still remains relatively high, but it is going down. And the drop is driven by urban liberals who are blaming Democrats for the rising crime wave, or at the very least disapproving of how Democrats are handling the rising crime wave, and thus deciding to buy guns. We saw this early last year at the start of the pandemic. In major urban strongholds, lines out the door of people trying to buy guns for the first time, record gun sales. And even this past month, we are seeing more record gun sales. Now, there have been a lot of people talking about the humor in liberals going to gun stores and being shocked to find they cannot buy guns. But I don't fault these people for being ignorant necessarily. I certainly think these people should have been paying attention to their rights for a while, and they should know what it means to vote for these people who will pass more stricter laws. But I just say this to many of these individuals. Thank you for now supporting gun rights. Thank you for exercising your right to keep and bear arms. Thank you for taking personal responsibility for your safety and security. And thank you for finally acknowledging, those who have, that Democrat policies in many places has taken away your right to defend yourself and has caused an escalation in crime to the point where we are now dealing with anarcho-tyranny. There's a viral video. It's going around right now. I don't think it's all that important. It shows people beating each other up in an airport. And I've seen some people saying, like, I'll get fined or kicked off an airplane if I'm not wearing a mask. But if you get into a brawl in the middle of the airport, seemingly no one does anything to stop it. That's anarcho-tyranny, where people who commit crimes get away with it, but they will certainly enforce the laws against you. But again, I don't think this video is the most important thing in the world. It's just a fight in an airport. But I think it's fair to say this is reality. If you, as an honest, law-abiding citizen, want to exercise your constitutional right to keep and bear arms, police will absolutely arrest you and you will be imprisoned. Meanwhile, in many other places, these people get away with crimes. Criminals get away with breaking the law. We have far-left extremists smashing up windows, and they continue to get away with it. That's anarcho-tyranny. Well, now I think regular people are starting to finally realize these gun control laws make no sense. Crime is through the roof, and it's going to be incumbent upon you to defend yourself. One of the big debates we've been having on the Timcast IRL podcast is about the death penalty, because I oppose it, because I do not believe that we should empower the state to kill people, because people like Kamala Harris have kept innocent people in prison on death row, and that means you would be sanctioning the government to kill innocent people. I know it may be 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 10,000, but my question then is, how many innocent people are you willing to allow the state to kill if it means they will kill bad people? I think there's a simple solution for everybody in this one, people who disagree with me. I certainly don't want the most evil and vile people roaming the streets and getting away with their crimes. Of course not. I just don't trust the state to be honest about who is deserving of death. And I don't know if I have the right to determine that unless I have personally witnessed someone about to cause great bodily harm or death upon another person, in which case my solution is this. I oppose the death penalty, but I'm for 2A to a very absolute degree. I believe regular people should be allowed to own RPGs and even nuclear arms, because Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And my friends, nuclear arms are arms. Back in the day, when the founding fathers were crafting these provisions in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they were privateers. They were people who owned massive warships. Some of those powerful warships were privately owned. So don't come to me with this, you can't own a cannon. No, you can. Now, of course, I recognize the absurdity of a private citizen owning nuclear weapons. Sure. But if you don't like it, then we must amend the Constitution. You can't just arbitrarily decide that some arms are not worthy of our rights. And therefore, yeah, people can own nuclear arms. So I'll say it again for the death penalty. And we'll talk about it as I go through these stories and break down where the current polling stands and the record gun sales that are occurring. Yeah, people do blame Democrats for the rising crime, and they're buying guns because of it. So if you take issue with this and you don't want people buying guns, you need to vote in better leaders, because they are sacrificing what you believe for political expediency. And yeah, if you don't like I don't like the death penalty, But I still think people should have a right to keep and bear arms, and thus maybe then there would be less victims and we'd have to worry a lot less about the death penalty. But let's get into that. Let's start with the news here. We have the story from the Washington Examiner. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member to get access to exclusive members on the Timcast IRL podcast and to generally just help support everything we are doing. We got a new book out. We have more segments up to Timcast IRL every day, Monday through Thursday. And we just hired another journalist. And that's all thanks to you guys who are members at timcast.com. So if you really want to help us out, timcast.com, become a member. But don't forget to like this video right now, subscribe to this channel, hit that subscribe button, take the URL, share it wherever you can. That's the most powerful way to help. Let's read this first story from the Examiner. Urban liberals rethink guns and policing amid crime spike on their doorstep. Let me just not mince words. I'll start right with the lead here. An ABC News Ipsos poll published early this week found that just 36% of voters approve of Joe Biden's handling of crime, while 61% disapprove. On gun violence, 66% of voters disapprove of Biden's performance, with 32% approving. Now, just because people are saying Joe Biden and the Democrats have screwed up as it pertains to crime doesn't mean these same people are saying everybody should go buy guns. No. But there are certainly many liberals who are turning around and trying to buy guns. Last year, there was a viral video where a gun store owner was frustrated, saying, y'all come into my shop for the first time and are angry that I can't sell you a gun. Well, that's your fault for voting for these people, so don't get mad at me. It's actually kind of hilarious. You know, what's funny is I believe my most viewed video last year on my Timcast channel, my Timcast News, my other YouTube channel, was from 2019. And it was about a liberal journalist who tries to buy guns and can't. But she was a good sport about it. She was a good journalist. She didn't ever actually buy a gun. She said, I'm going to see what the process is like. She went to a local Walmart and they said, ma'am, we're not going to sell you a weapon because we can't. And she says she left empty-handed. She didn't realize that it was actually relatively difficult in many circumstances to buy a weapon. Now, it's not the hardest thing in the world, depending on what state you were in, but people liked watching the video. They're saying, see, these people are finally learning. But listen, this journalist was a good sport about it and said, I didn't know. And here's my report. Thank you for reading. That's what a journalist should do. I investigated something, realized I was wrong, and wrote about it. Now, a lot of these people are showing up to these gun shops and they're angry. They're like, sell me the gun. The gun owner's like, fill out the NICS form, the background check form, the criminal check form. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, okay, you're being researched. It's a delay. We'll call you when you can buy a gun. And people are leaving like, whoa, I need it now, man. Crime is through the roof. There's a major pandemic. And they go, sorry, you voted for this. That's the problem of ignorance. So what I will stress right now is there are a lot of people who are blaming Democrats for the rise in crime. And there are a lot of people who are buying guns because of the rise in crime. That is not to say that these groups of people are the same people and the people buying guns are blaming Joe Biden for it, although I feel like it's a fair assessment to make. If you're someone who's like, crime is through the roof, I'm pretty sure you recognize who's in charge. But let's read more. They say in unexpected places where liberal views on firearms and policing have dominated the conversation, a growing number of people are embracing gun ownership or backing measures that would boost law enforcement in response to the rise in violence. On gun violence, 66% disapprove of Joe Biden. The loss of confidence in Biden's ability to navigate the issue has come as the nation's homicide rate hits historic highs. And the growing concern is pushing people in some of the country's most prosperous neighborhoods to get creative about keeping their streets safe. Applications for concealed carry permits have exploded in Los Angeles County, where voters went for Biden by more than 40 points. You know what, man? It's frustrating. It is. You may have heard of Phoenix Ammunition. They're the ones that on their website, when you go there, because you can buy, they do like competition, performance ammo, stuff like that. You go to their website and you get a pop-up. It says, did you vote for Joe Biden? And if you click yes, it boots you off the site and then brings you to a website, to Joe Biden's website, talking about his plan for banning the online sale of accessories and ammunition. There's also, I believe they do this when you try to buy ammo, you have to check a box saying you certify that you did not vote for Joe Biden. And the owner has been flat out blunt about it. If Joe Biden has his way, I'm out of business. So who are these people? He says, who are these people who are going to, vote to take away the rights from everybody else and then say, well, I'll buy it now? That's despicable. Absolutely. California, Los Angeles is a good example of this. However, what I say to all these people is welcome to the cause. Thank you for supporting gun rights. Please vote in kind. They go on to say, since late 2018, the LA County Sheriff's Office approved roughly 2,100 concealed carry permit applications compared to less than 200 that were approved by the office the 4 years prior. Michael Schellenberger, who spoke with a number of Beverly Hills residents for a report about the area's changing attitudes towards crime, said fear has driven many liberals to revisit their ideas about guns and policing. They know they're more afraid. And I think that they're aware that it gives them new insight into what life is like when you don't have enough police and enough security. There's just a lot of progressive buyer's remorse right now. Well, I will also stress, leftists, they're pro-gun. 100%. Okay, maybe not 100%. Like right-wing individuals are overwhelmingly pro-gun. We know that. Leftists, like communists and socialists, oh, they want all the guns. They just want to use them to take over for the most part and then take away guns from you. Liberals, well, they have the establishment institutions, so they just want to take guns away from you. They seem to think that banning guns for everybody will make everyone safer, and that's literally not true, especially with the advent of 3D printed guns and ghost guns. Sorry, it ain't going to happen like that. They go on to say voters in LA County approved a measure in November 2020 that would have steered tens of millions of dollars away from law enforcement and into other community measures in response to the nationwide movement calling for cities to defund their police departments. A judge later paused the measure. LA city leaders this year have since moved to add millions back to the department. What a dumb idea. I think there's a lot of problems with police. But all of a sudden people are like, oh no, there's no police. What are we going to do? Yeah, surprise, surprise. I think it's good, though, in some ways. People now are realizing they have to take responsibility for themselves. And this is why I brought up the death penalty early on. A lot of people are upset that they are victims of these extreme crimes. I agree. Well, those victims should be armed. And they still may end up being victims, that I get. But I believe that we would see substantially less serious crimes, serious violent crimes and atrocities if everybody just was armed. An armed society is a polite society. You know what I learned in Chicago, and which really bothers me about the suburbanites in Chicago? Let me tell you guys this. When I'm driving in the city, when I was like, 18, 19, whatever, and I'm with someone from Chicago, no road rage. No road rage. You know why? Because the likelihood that if you're driving on the highway and you cut somebody off, you flick them off, you scream at them, there is a probability that person speeds up and shoots at you. You think I'm kidding? I've had people shoot at me for literally no reason. Me and my oldest brother were driving. We exited 290, which goes east to west into Chicago. Then it curves north. But we're driving into the city and we get off at Independence, which is basically Pulaski, and we're heading north. When an Oldsmobile driving the other way, a guy just aims a gun out the window and shoots at our car. And we just freak out like, why would they do that? Chicago, man. Yeah, that's a crime. I don't blame the gun for that. I don't blame the car for driving close to us. But if he didn't have a car, he wouldn't have been near us. No, the problem was the person. That being said, if I'm driving on the highway and I'm with somebody from the city, I'll tell you how it goes. Typically, among my friends, no road rage. No honking and screaming. We're like, mind your own business, man. Because an armed society is a polite society. You never know if there's going to be a gangbanger in that car and he's going to be like, you got a problem, bro? Because we knew people in our neighborhood who got shot and killed. People who are part of our friend circles even. But I'll tell you what was really frustrating. You had two kinds of people from the suburbs. One kind were those who were extremely terrified. I had friends who would like shiver and quake when we drove through certain areas of Chicago, so they kept their mouth shut. Good. You know the rules, you'll be fine. But I also had people who are used to this uppity upper middle class area where they can scream and spit and yowl and nothing bad would happen to them. And so we'd be driving and they'd be screaming out the window. I'd be like, dude, stop, man. You never know if you're going to piss off some criminal hothead and they're armed to the teeth. So an armed society is a polite society. When you know that people are armed, you ain't going to rob them. You got a real risk there. And some people are still willing to take that risk. But if everybody was armed, I believe that risk would be substantially reduced. And I think people are starting to realize this. According to Gallup, stricter gun laws are less popular in the U.S. This is from November of this year. While they do say 52% of Americans want stricter gun laws, it is the lowest since 2014. Take a look at this. It peaked around 2016 at 67%. And right now it's at 52. You'd have to go back to 2014 to find a lower number. Now, it's been lower. In 2010, it was lower. But right now, support for gun rights is going up, kept as now, I should say, and less strict has gone up a little bit, and more strict is going down. You know why it's going down? Because these progressives and these liberals went to the gun shops and said, I need to defend myself. And they said, great, come back in 5 days. You're delayed. The first time I went to buy my first gun. It took 5 days. And what had happened was, this is my understanding. I may be wrong because I don't know the background stuff. I filled out the forms and everything, and they said, you are being delayed. 5 days later, they called me back and said, you've finally been cleared. 5 days. And then I went in and I bought my first gun. Since then, it's mostly been fine because I'm pretty sure now they're aware, like, this guy buys a lot of guns. We know who he is. And so now when I go in West Virginia and I fill out the forms, it takes 5-10 minutes to clear the forms and then I can purchase the weapon. But a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize you got to fill out, you always are background checked, always. They don't realize that you can be delayed. They don't realize that sometimes people get denied. James O'Keefe was put on a list wrongly and they had to file a suit. Let's see where we're at now. 2021, gun sales in New York are second highest on record. Gee, I wonder why. Here we have from Forbes. Americans bought about 1.7 million firearms in November, according to estimates. Let me make sure we're talking about this is December 1st, 2021, record gun sales. Americans bought about 1.7 million firearms in November. Last month, the gun industry's was the gun industry's third busiest November since record keeping began. This year also appears to be the second busiest year on record for firearm sales. More than 18 million guns have been purchased. The National Shooting Sports Foundation generated similar estimates. It says 1.543 million guns were sold last month. 16.72 million were sold in the first 11 months of 2021 as a whole, outpacing every year aside from 2020. Now, what's happening? Quite simple. Let me show you this article from Slate. This is from November of this year. Liberals really need to look at the fact that they're going to need to defend themselves. In the wake of the Rittenhouse verdict, a liberal gun rights activist explains why she thinks both sides of this trial get it wrong. But I need to only show you one portion so you can understand the liberal mindset as we move forward. Laura Smith says, I am kind of the stereotype. I am the upper middle class white suburban mom. I'm literally packing to take my child to a sport tournament out of town. I didn't grow up with guns at all. And then I married a Marine. I believed guns are bad and dangerous, and my husband kept saying to me, I'm good with you not wanting a gun if you have the facts right, but I don't think you do. Will you please just go take a lesson? I took some lessons, and I found out that I was good at it. It felt very empowering and it was fun. And that was not something I had ever seen in the gun debate on either side. It was either guns were for defending yourself or they will kill you if you had one in your house, period. I Googled women's and guns or liberals and guns and found two groups, the liberal gun club and a girl and a gun. Got invited with both. Then I started really learning about the root cause mitigation and learning more about what does and doesn't work. Like how we could ban all the ARs and statistically it would do nothing about gun deaths. I liked the club and I liked the people. I had some press background from being an attorney and they asked me to do an interview and I said I would. I started being one of the people who talked about it a lot in the press from a pro Second Amendment standpoint. Many of these liberals don't know anything about gun laws. They don't know anything about guns. They don't know anything about what's causing gun violence. Yet they keep voting to pass these laws. So I say, this is awesome. It's unfortunate that it took crime to make these people finally try and buy a gun and then realize what was going on. The Wall Street Journal says, gun control support drops amid growing crime and firearm purchases. This story going back to 2020, a year ago. Gun sales to first-time buyers skyrocket amid fears of bloody election and unrest. Well, I can't say I blame them. We have this story from the Daily Mail. U.S. political polarization may reach irreversible tipping point as Republicans and Democrats cannot unite even in the face of war, climate change, and pandemics, Ivy League study says. We'll come back to this. But a lot of people are generally starting to realize what conservatives already knew. The gun laws don't make sense. Banning AR-15s don't do anything. And now we're getting a little scary with it. Take a look at this. Record number of guns seized at airport security checkpoints in 2021. Security agents have confiscated almost 5,700 guns so far this year. Don't bring guns to airports. Now, I think you can check guns. I'm not entirely sure. Check with your local laws. If you put them in their proper case and they are not loaded I believe you can put it in checked carry-on and ship it. I believe that's correct. But you got to be careful about where you're going, too, because you're not going to get respect from, like, if you fly to New York, they're not going to be nice to you about this. So you better realize as soon as you touch that bag, they're going to be like, boom, possession of an illegal weapon. So my recommendation is not to travel with them. Be careful about, make sure you're following the laws. Talk with your local gun shop about effective means of transport and following, knowing all the rules and regulations. But it's worrying to me two things. That people would want to fly with guns, many of which are loaded, and that they don't know not to bring them. I think that to me is kind of frightening. Now, of course, as many people are realizing that the crime surge, which is driving them to buy the guns, is caused by Democrats, the Democrats won't say it. And that's why I think there's another contributing factor to a potential red wave come November. Pelosi slams outrageous crime surge, won't admit to liberal cause. I tell you this, as I explained, I believe if everybody in San Francisco was armed to the teeth, you wouldn't be seeing these smash and grabs. There's a video going viral right now, and it's disturbing. A man walks into a pizzeria in Philadelphia and tries buying something. They open the register, and then he reaches over and tries grabbing stuff from the register when a 14-year-old draws a weapon and ends this man's life. Now, a lot of people have said it was a bad shoot. I mean, this guy was just taking loose cash from the register. He didn't appear to be armed or anything like that. And that kid, he may get in serious trouble. But I will tell you this. You better believe a lot of people in that seat are going to be thinking twice about trying to steal cash. Now, there are some states, I believe Texas, allows you to use lethal force to defend property. And that means like your phone. Some states don't allow this. You got to check with your local laws. But it is outright fascinating. In a place like Texas, the way they view it is, if I'm armed and you try taking my watch, I have the right to use lethal force. Man, and I'll tell you this. I don't know about the law. That's for this Texas to decide. But my personal view is I would not try to end someone's life over taking my watch. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. Only if I really felt that my life was in danger or they could cause great bodily harm would I escalate to the point with the use of lethal force. It's not so simple to say you'd shoot him in the leg or shoot him in the arm. No, you got to aim for center mass. Why? Because you don't want to miss and hit someone else. It's really that simple. And you need to make sure that what you're firing is effective. People don't realize this, man. Less lethal munitions, less weapons, they're not necessarily effective. It's ridiculous to me when people say like, oh, use pepper spray. Use pepper spray? I know people. I have seen people at riots get pepper sprayed and just get angry. It doesn't stop them. It just hurts. I've seen people not close their eyes, just like, and then they get really mad and they're running, shoving cops and all that stuff. Because cops aren't out there doing riots, out there, in riots to kill people. They're just trying to deter them. So for an individual who needs to defend themselves, pepper spray ain't going to do nothing, man. I'm telling you this. Pelosi won't admit it, but she's finally speaking out. And take a look at this. De Blasio fiddles in the face of rising crime, leaving Adams to end the mayhem. We get it. All right. People are realizing that Joe Biden is screwing all of this up. The Wall Street Journal says blame voters for the rising crime rate. Just maybe voters are starting to regret the consequences of electing progressives. Yeah, I hope so. Because I got to tell you this. The individual who is convinced to go and buy a gun, who then has a cold splash of water in the face, realizing they can't just do it, might now be like, it's Democrats who are running the city. It's Democrats who are overseeing the rise in crime. And it's Democrats who are blocking me from protecting myself. Yeah, that's a problem. So maybe they'll wake up and say, I will not vote for this. For the Wall Street Journal's opinion section, we have Daniel Henninger write, for the stressed out voters in your political life, an aphorism to print and wrap in ribbon for Christmas giving is live and learn. Though in these crime-sodden times, it might need revision, die and learn. Some 30 major cities across the U.S. are recording record or near-record homicides this year. As Raphael Mangual of the Manhattan Institute noted in these pages recently, smash and grab became a daily search term in 2021. In cities with strict gun laws, such as New York, stabbings have become common by criminals. Expert on the charging laws for using knife or gun. Common by criminals expert on the charging laws. Getting blamed for this mayhem are a generation of so-called progressive prosecutors. Many of these individuals we know, like Kim Foxx. Across America, the principle of prevention has been displaced by intervention, whatever that means. Of the career criminal accused of murdering Jacqueline Avant in her bedroom in Beverly Hills, Mr. Gasson said, as far as we can see, he never received any meaningful intervention that may have helped him set his life on a different path. Well, you know what I can say? Breonna Taylor was sleeping in her bed with her boyfriend when the police knocked and broke that door down. And her boyfriend fired, striking an officer in the leg. They fired, killing Breonna Taylor. But the boyfriend was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing because he had a right to keep and bear arms, even against the police. He didn't know it was cops. And they said, yeah, we can't go after him for this. I don't like the idea that people are shooting at each other, but I think it's important to have the ability to defend yourself. As for this woman, she was in her bedroom in Beverly Hills, and she was murdered. What if she had a gun? What if she had a gun or another weapon, and someone broke in, and she was properly trained, and she had that weapon, and she was using frangible or hollow point rounds because she didn't want overpenetration through the walls of the building, and then someone broke in and was like, "Aha, I'm a murderer," and she went bang. No one's murdering me tonight. See, this is why I bring up the death penalty. I feel like we could reduce the amount of victims if people had guns, and we wouldn't need a death penalty for accidental deaths. I don't want accidental deaths to happen. That's why I think if more people get properly trained and are raised around guns to understand the severity of like the power within, then we would have less accidents. Used to be that way in this country. Used to be that there were high school gun clubs and they would shoot. Now people are terrified of guns. They don't want to shoot them. They don't want to get trained with them. And as that liberal for the Slate article said, she thought they were dangerous. And her husband said, just take a class, take a training course. And she did. And he said, wow, it's not so bad. That's right. Proper training is important. There may come a time in your life when you are confronted with a very serious risk or threat, and your only option may be the use of a firearm. You need to know how to use it to make sure that you use it properly. It's time to stop being so scared. I think people, they believe too much out of movies. Right, there's a viral video of people getting arrested for trying to eat an Applebee's without Vax cards in New York. And as they're getting arrested, there's a woman yelling, they haven't been read their Miranda rights. They haven't been read their Miranda rights. And I'm just like, I am so sick of that trope. People, please. The police do not need to read you your Miranda rights. That's only if they're conducting an investigation, if they choose to read them to you. There's no circumstance in which they're obligated to. I should say this. If they're conducting an investigation, they read you your rights to make sure everything you say will be admissible. Because if they don't, then what you say can be thrown out. But if you're trespassing in a building because you're doing a protest or a sit-in, which I respect 100%, no one's got to read you your rights. People believe too much from movies. So they think all guns, like, I was watching a show on Netflix, and there's a guy and he's holding a gun, and he fires, and his hand flies up, bang, and I'm like, dude, that's no. Okay, just no. Stop. Movies, people get too much from sensationalized movies. I do like that recent times movies have tried to be more realistic with it, but too much of what people think they know about weapons, silencers going pew, 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 pew. Okay, yeah. Go out to a range and have a listen. I'll tell you this. If you're in a big enough open field, you'll be surprised how the sound travels, right? We were recently at a range, and you could stand behind the weapon, and it didn't sound that loud up close. It was only when the echo came back. And I've actually got to use a suppressed AR-15 5.56, and it's amazing. It's like reduced recoil and quiet, but you still wear ear protection. The point is, guns exist, especially in this nation where we have enshrined our right. We have guaranteed that right. The government cannot infringe upon it. They still do. But you need to understand how to use it, and I recommend people go out and buy weapons. Get proper training. I do. I recommend it. But you have to take responsibility for yourself. If you do, you have to be trained. You have to know exactly what you're doing and not screw around. You should get a safe and properly secure it so no one can open it but you. Reduce accidents. Make sure you know what you're doing. And there is gun insurance. You can get all this stuff. It is incumbent upon you, if you choose to get armed, to be responsible for what that means. And that means going and getting proper training. Now, moving forward, I wonder if this is a sign of something good to come in the next several years or something bad. As I mentioned in this story from the Daily Mail about hyperpolarization reaching a tipping point, this is an Ivy League study. A study led by Cornell professor Michael Macy claims to have identified a tipping point. They say, the study titled Polarization and Tipping Points was published Wednesday. The researchers' model shows the role party identity and levels of intolerance for disagreement have on ideological levels. So there's a tipping point right here. Shock value. They've basically just quantified there's some point at which people aren't going to care about anything. He says researchers call the event a shock that initially brings people together. But if America's polarization is too extreme, the effects of that shared shock get taken over by existing divisions. If we reach that point, we cannot unite even in the face of war, climate change, pandemics, or other challenges to the survival of our society. This should be obvious to everybody. It's literally in front of us. Some people thought the pandemic would unite this country. It didn't, because the mainstream media, they were hell-bent on saying Trump, everything he did was wrong and lying about it. Trump said to drink bleach. No, he didn't. Trump said to inject bleach. No, he didn't. Trump said, and it was an off-the-cuff question that probably should have had some more thorough thought, though. That could have required more thorough thought, though. He said, maybe there's some kind of disinfectant you could, drink or maybe and put beneath the skin or inject. And everyone made fun of him for it. Yeah, there's UV light therapy. It's experimental. They've done some tests on that. They put a UV light. It's a disinfectant. There are other treatments that are theoretically are considered disinfectants. But Trump, who's not an expert on this, speaking his mind, I roll my eyes at. But when the media claims Trump says drink bleach, yeah, the polarization is gonna cause this country to fracture. I mean, I should say, burn to the ground. Right now, though, liberals buying guns, recognizing the problem or a problem, might be a good thing. Because now you can come out and say, well, look at all these liberals buying guns. Certainly they recognize something. Maybe that will bring people together against the uniparty and the establishment. Or maybe it will result in many people armed to the teeth hating each other, and then things get really bad. Well, we'll only be able to wait and see. So I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.